Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Supporting Students from Foster Care and Homeless Settings with the Transition to Post-Secondary Education. I'm your host, Adriana Pavasic, Community Engagement Coordinator with Florida College Access Network. Before we get started with today's presentation, a few housekeeping items. First, we welcome your questions. You can submit them at any time in the Q&A box. And second, please share what you are learning on social media. Feel free to tag FCAN and use the hashtags FCAN and TalentStrongFL. Finally, this webinar is being recorded. All materials will be available, including this presentation, in about a week or so on our website. Before we get started, a little background on FCAN. Our mission is to lead the collaborative movement to ensure every Floridian achieves an education beyond high school and a rewarding career. Our vision is to see a Florida working together where education is the pathway to economic mobility for all. We do our work in three primary ways: local college access networks, which are cross-sector coalitions of leaders that collaborate to remove barriers and provide more support for student success. We also publish research and data on evidence-based practices and policy opportunities to strengthen Florida's talent pool. Lastly, we coordinate 4 College Ready Florida initiatives that provide schools and community organizations resources to help students continue their education after high school. FCAN's work is guided by our 7 conditions for success. Today's webinar provides great examples of many of these conditions, including opportunity for everyone, affordability, and community collaboration. Before we get started, we have a few poll questions to ask all of you. Hold on one second. Adam, if you could just fire the first question, it should be under poll on your end if you see it. So the first question we have is, how familiar are you with the homeless fee exemption, the homeless tuition fee exemption? Extremely familiar, moderately familiar, somewhat familiar, slightly familiar, and not at all familiar. So give it a few more seconds. Okay, I think we can end the poll and publish the results. So we have about 15% extremely familiar, 18 moderately, 13 somewhat, 18 slightly, and 37 not at all. So, okay. And next question we have is the DCF waiver. So I will share the results. How familiar are you with the Department of Children and Families tuition fee exemption? Extremely familiar, moderately familiar, somewhat familiar, slightly familiar, and not at all familiar. Okay. Adam, you might, okay, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so we'll give it a few more seconds. Okay, I think we can end the poll and then share the results. 18 extremely familiar, 14 moderately, 18% somewhat, slightly, 15%, and not at all 35. Okay, I think we can do the next question. I think our last question, how familiar are you with the Positive Pathways program? Extremely familiar, moderately familiar, somewhat, slightly, not at all. Okay, I think we can end that poll and share the results of that one. Okay, so we have some extremely familiar, 9%, 9% also familiar, and 9% somewhat, and then 13 slightly, and about 60% not at all. Awesome. So I think we are done with the poll questions. So I will move on to the next slide. With today's presenters, we have Senior Director of Positive Pathways Program, Dr. Steve Rios. Dr. Rios helps to support a network of campus and community-based advocates for young adults coming from the foster care system, striving to obtain a post-secondary credential. Dr. Rios holds a doctorate in adult education and human resource development from Florida International University and a master's degree in public administration from Florida Atlantic University. We also have the president of the Citrus County Coalition for College and Careers, Patrick Simon. With 41 years of experience in education, Patrick served 34 of those years with Citrus County School District as a teacher, district level administrator, and school administrator, including high school and elementary school principal. And we also have Jasmine Moore, college coach with Educate Tomorrow. Jasmine has diverse experience in developing programs and coordinating initiatives to help students who have experienced foster care and/or homelessness. She has a BS in sociology from Radford University and a master's in higher education administration from Old Dominion University. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Rios, who will get us started today. Welcome, Steve, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you so much, Adriana and Adam. I want to thank the Florida College Access Network for always being such wonderful partners, for giving us the opportunity to present about our programs. And I'm very happy to have my two colleagues with me who represent very different aspects of the work that we do. And you'll be able to hear about that in depth. So let me share my screen. So basically, let me just start off with the pictures that you see in front of you. Right there in the middle, it says in college and homeless. And it's just not something that we think a lot about, right? When students are in college, we pretty much figure, well, I mean, they're in a dorm, they're taken care of, no problems. Well, the young person on the left is a young person who did go through college homeless and who actually made videos about that, which you will have access to once you get this PowerPoint presentation. And the young woman on the right also used a tuition waiver, and she went all the way to getting her law degree. So we're very excited to know that, you know, there are tremendous possibilities and tremendous stories of triumph with this challenging situations. I just want to thank all of you throughout the state. It's so encouraging to hear that more than 320 people registered. And so this is an opportunity for us to reach out to, you know, high school counselors and to other folks who are online to tell you about our work. And we're very excited about that. Before I forget, I definitely want to invite everyone to join the Positive Pathways Network. So if I don't get into detail on that later, remind me. All right, so we're basically just going to cover some statistics. We're going to talk about some state resources. We're going to talk about positive pathways, and then we're going to talk about some strategies to help the transition be more seamless. And we're going to get some insight from Patrick Simon about FAFSA completion, maybe the challenges and the opportunities that are there. So Positive Pathways is basically a pretty unique organization. Throughout the country, very few states have networks of professionals that are set up like Positive Pathways. This is a program which is funded by the Florida Department of Children and Families and administered by Educate Tomorrow. And as you can see from the screen, we have you know, these four major pillars. With the young people in the middle, we have education communities, independent living services, which is a social service sector. We have families and peers, which are super important, especially siblings who have gone to college earlier, and nonprofit philanthropic organizations. This pretty much makes up the model for our network. We have more than 250 people on our Facebook page and 700 people in our network database. Positive Pathways was basically funded and started to be funded by the Department of Children and Families in 2016. And as I mentioned, it is a network of professionals in the child welfare field, higher education, somewhat K through 12, students, as well as community providers. The purpose is, like I mentioned, to develop and support this statewide network of professionals. All of you are invited to join, to be a part of this network. By being part of our network, you have access to individuals all over the state of Florida who are working to support these young people as they succeed in college. And as you can see, the numbers have been very encouraging over the past few years. The number of focused and consistent campus-based programs has increased from 4 to 16. The number of students served by campus-based programs has increased from 1,241 to more than 5,000. And the percent of these young people has increased dramatically as well. So this is all a result of the Positive Pathways Network members, right? All of our members around state working to increase the attention that they pay to young people from foster care, now homeless settings on their campuses have resulted in these kind of increases. This gives you an example of, it's a couple of years out of date, but it shows you where these young people are. So I know that there are people from all over the state on this call. As you look in your area, you can see about how many people are from your neck of the woods who are using this tuition exemption. This is the DCF tuition exemption. The homeless tuition exemption falls under DCF as well, but normally when someone says DCF, they're talking about the DCF foster care exemption. And this just shows you that there has been increases up until COVID. There were consistent increases in the number of people, young people using the tuition and fee exemption. There has been a big drop off because of COVID. And so now more than ever, we need to have these kind of interactions and trainings and the support of your support throughout the state. We do have good news, though, that since 2013, more than 3,500 young people using the tuition and fee exemption, more than 3,500 young people from foster care have graduated with degrees. And this doesn't even include as much the certificates. So these are AAAS and BA degrees. So in terms of the number of students using the homeless waiver, you can see on the left that there's been this increase. The numbers that we have show probably around 400 now, if we're going from 376 a couple years ago, in the Florida State University system. And in the Florida college system, our numbers from 2020-21 show that 723 students who don't have a solid, serious place to live are pursuing their education, which is really encouraging. But there's so many more students, as you know, who could take advantage of these opportunities. That's why we're all here. Speaking of students who can take advantage of these opportunities, there's two folks right here on the left corner, Erica Jackson and Amber Mannings. These are individuals who one of them used the homeless waiver and one of them used the foster care waiver in order to get all the way through a law degree, which is really, really encouraging. When you have a chance to come back after this PowerPoint is sent to you, you can click on the video and actually hear them. We have a lot to cover, so I'm not going to play the video now. But I also did want to tell you on the top, you can see that there's a program called Hope Navigator and Youth, the Office of Continuing Care. That's an office that was set up by the Florida Department of Children and Families to help young people from foster care, and they also take calls from homeless youth as well, navigate the challenges of transitioning to adults. So definitely want you all to be aware of that. And I'm so excited that this PowerPoint will be sent to you and will be available on our website and on the FCAN website so that you can have access to all this information, these names and these resources. All right, so some of the main benefits that are available to young people from foster care. Well, one is called extended foster care, which means that young adults who typically would have aged out at 18 can remain in foster care until age 21 or 22 under some circumstances, if they have a documented disability, while they finish school. And this has made a tremendous difference in the lives of so many students. Um, they need to fulfill these requirements, as you see on the right, in order to be in extended foster care. Now, extended foster care doesn't provide some of the extra money and funding that is provided by this program, which is PES. This is a state program for eligible foster youth that provides monthly payments of up to $1,756. This money can be used for all the life necessities of young people. And this is in addition to the tuition waiver and in addition to the Pell that students can get. As you can see, to be eligible for PES, it's these requirements. Turning 18 while in, it can be any of these requirements, okay? And if not in PES, if they don't meet the qualifications, yet they were in foster care, the state also does have an education training voucher program available to them. I wanted to show you here that the benefits in general can be, the Pell Grant for these young people, which pays for tuition and more. The PES grant, which I mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, the PES stipend, as well as the tuition waiver, which is good up to age 28, and it's not limited to a bachelor's degree. The PES payments are up to age 23. So as you can see, there's different ages, right? I talked to you about, oh, some people just age out at 18, but they can do extended foster care to 21. Okay, good, that's 21. And then PES to 23, all right, that's 23. And then to age 28. So you can see that there's a lot for young people to process in terms of what they can be eligible for. The state statute related to fee exemptions, basically, these are the students who are exempt from the payment of tuitions and fees. They're listed there. We know about dual enrolled students. You work with them all the time. And then it's the students that we're working with that you can see listing that information below. And this is just on the right side, this is what the campus-based folks when they, when one of the community-based care organizations, which is a lead agency, gives folks this waiver. And as you can see, there's different qualifying rows there. He or she was at the time of reaching age 18 in out-of-home care or adopted, or now even if they're reunified. So that's a new thing that just took place. They can still receive the waiver even if they've been reunified with their parents. So this is just more information about the tuition and fee exemption, and this one relates to the homeless students. As you can see, the homeless students qualify if they lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, or have a primary nighttime residence in a public or private shelter designed to provide temporary residence, transitional living program, a place not designed for or ordinary used for regular sleeping. So in terms of the practicalities of how young people get certified, it's easier if they're coming right out of high school because there's McKinney-Vento programs and leaders around the state, liaisons. For those students who are out a couple of years and trying to get certified, that's what's going on now. Like the new law provided some details about how those young people, in their 20s can be certified for homelessness. The state is in the process of making rules, and as it stands now, colleges and universities around the state are doing things maybe a little different from each other. But that's one of the main reasons that this law passed, so that it can become more consistent. All right, and basically this is an overview of that new state law that I'm talking about, and it really revises the definitions of homeless children. It requires school districts to provide certified unaccompanied youth with cards that show that, yes, I'm qualified for this tuition exemption. It requires the appointment of liaisons. Foster care liaisons had already been appointed or required, and now homeless liaisons. In many instances, it's the same person at the colleges. And also it requires for OPAGA, which is the Office of Program Policy, to conduct a study about how effective the McKinney-Vento and the campus-based program liaisons are. Okay, I'm not going to cover every single thing because I want to give my colleagues definitely a chance to speak as well. But I do want you to know that this is an extensive PowerPoint, which is available for you as a resource, right? So what you see in front of you is really the listing of all the information regarding this HB 1577. Even talks about, programs that homeless students can now get their driver's license, support with that and insurance. So there's a lot here. So for those of you who are interested, you can come back to this PowerPoint, click on the bottom here, and there's a 4-page document that goes into detail about all these things that are listed on the first page. This just shows you that there's a great need. You saw that there are only about 1,000 students or so using the homeless waiver in the colleges and in the universities. This shows you how many, the total population of homeless and the number of homeless students is 91,000 coming out of the school system. So you can see that there's still a tremendous opportunity for students to take advantage of this homeless waiver. Okay, and just some of the details. Your McKinney-Vento person knows about these things, but this is what is required in the front of the form must include this information: the circumstances, the date the youth was certified, the name and title of the signature of the certifying person. Most of the time, that's your McKinney-Vento contact. Okay, and this is a new form that was developed by the state, which allows students to get free birth certificates as well as health services. All right, and these are just the specifics about what this card should look like. So this is just for your reference. We do have on our website the Florida McKinney-Vento program district contacts and other contacts as well, which I'll talk about later if time permits. At this time, I would like to turn over the presentation to my colleague, Jasmine Moore. Jasmine.
Thank you, Dr. Rios. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to kind of turn the presentation to a point where I can give you some perspective from the college liaison or coaches that are there that can help assist you as you're working with your students who are interested in post-secondary education. So really briefly, I'd just like to circle back to the two different types of waivers that we see for students who have experienced foster care or homelessness. The very first one, that DCF tuition fee waiver, students can use that until they reach 28 years of age. There is not a limitation for the type of degree that a student has. So as you saw earlier, two of our students, Amber and Erica, one a DCF tuition recipient, the other a homeless tuition recipient, and they use that for their JD degree, which is amazing. So that's a really great benefit for students who qualify for the DCF tuition waiver, and they can utilize that if they qualify for it. And then on the other side of things, if you have any students that you're working with, specifically as you're working with your McKinney-Vento liaison, and they come to the institution with that documentation, that can qualify them for the homeless tuition waiver. And similar to the DCF tuition and fee waiver, it waives the tuition and fees for students who are pursuing a post-secondary education. And there's not an age requirement currently for that. And students would just work with whoever that point of contact is at that state college or university to make sure that they are awarded that. So that's why that McKinney-Vento documentation is so important, because students can really utilize that as a financial resource as they pursue their post-secondary education. And for students who maybe aren't coming in with McKinney-Vento documentation, they can receive the homeless tuition waiver through community partners who are able to certify that they're homeless or meet that definition of homelessness. Next slide. So despite the financial resources that I just mentioned, students still have a significant financial need, because while their tuition and fee waiver covers the tuition and fees for their classes, oftentimes our students need more funding to get to their cost of attendance. So we're talking about housing, meal plans, and other things that they may need, such as books or transportation. And that can be one of the largest barriers to retention once a student gets to the college environment, is that lack of financial support from an adult or just not knowing about the resources in general. So when Patrick goes over the FAFSA information, That's why we really like to review that with our students to make sure that they are really getting everything that's available to them. Another barrier to retention in the college or post-secondary environment is that oftentimes our students don't know how to ask for help or don't know who to go to ask for help. And that can be very overwhelming. Oftentimes our students have similar situations or backgrounds as first generation, and navigating that college environment can be very stressful at times. Housing instability and rising cost of living are other two things that we're seeing with students who maybe are not able to stay in their degree. And that's why it's so important that we, with positive pathways, we build those connections and partnerships with community resources, as well as informing our students about FAFSA and financial aid so that they are aware of resources that can help cover some of those costs. So here I just wanted to highlight a model that's used for a campus coach program that I used to be involved in at one of our partner universities. So on the left there, you'll see something that's called the appreciative advising model. And at the heart of this is just a relationship building model focused on the holistic development of our students. So as you can see there are 6 different phases that we walk our students through. And all in all, it comes with the one-on-one meetings with our students, hearing about their strengths, hearing about their goals, and how we can help connect them to resources, as you can see there with the image on the right, to make sure that they're successful, that they're pursuing their degree, and ultimately graduating and going on to a successful career. So with the disarm and discover phase, that's getting to know our students as people and building those relationships, learning about what their strengths are, learning about what their passions are, and how we can apply that to other areas that may need attention. With the dream and design phases, those are phases that we work with our students to really develop and build that action plan. So what are your academic goals? What are your professional goals? And who are people on campus that can help you get to that point? And then with the deliver and don't settle phases, that's where we're just consistently working with our students throughout their time as they pursue their post-secondary degree to make sure that we adjust as needed, to celebrate the wins, and just help them navigate through challenges that may arise as they pursue their education. And the model on the right, again, is just an image that kind of puts our students at the focus, and it identifies key areas that really helps our students to be successful on campus. So for example, for our guidance counselors in high schools, when you're working with students who just got admitted to a university, the very first thing is connecting with that liaison or campus coach that can help them navigate through campus. So what is it like to sign up for orientation? Can your orientation fees be waived because you have the tuition and fee waiver? Connecting them to academic support when they're in their classes. A lot of colleges and universities offer tutoring free of cost for students that can help them get through some of those challenging courses and help them be successful. With the student engagement and support, when working with students, I really like to sit down with them and yes, talk about their academic needs, but I also want to know what are you passionate about? What do you like to do just as a person, or what do you want to get more involved in? And that's where those student organizations and different things on campus to get them involved really helps our students build that community, which is so crucial to having a sense of belonging and being successful in a college environment. Next, we have the campus resources, which on the next slide, I'll go over a little bit, are those key stakeholders that the liaison or coach can refer your students to when needed. So if they have a question about financial aid, they're connected to their financial aid counselor. If they have a question about housing and applying for break stay housing, we can point them in the right direction. And then last, the community partnership and resources. Our work is very collaborative, so we're always engaging and connecting with people in the community that can help fill in the gaps for our students as they pursue their education. And so these are just some of those key stakeholders on campus. So when you connect with your liaison, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, how you can find out who that is, these are the people that are usually helping our students navigate through these different areas as appropriate. So the point of contact of whatever college or university that your students may be going to will make sure that those students are connected with advising, that they're connected with the controller's office if they're the ones who are processing their tuition and fee waiver, The Dean of Students Office offers support for mental and physical health opportunities. That's something that we need to be focusing on with our students. Financial aid, housing, health services and counseling, and then community partners. So a little bit later, I'll talk about how you can identify who that point of contact is for the various colleges and universities in the state of Florida and how you can connect with them. But at this time, I will go ahead and pass it over to Patrick.
Jasmine, thanks. And I'm hoping to click in here in a moment. I wanted to first say that Citrus County is the area where I have served, as Steve mentioned, as an educator, as well as school principal, system principal, and district level director of research, accountability, and testing. We formed this organization after retirement. So we have been in action in the schools of Citrus County since 2018. And I am addressing this section of the PowerPoint, particularly to school-based staff, counselors, administrators, or any of those teachers or agents who are helping students matriculate from high school to the next place. So the focus is really centered on three questions that will help you know who we are and what we do. The first is what, then the so what, and now what. And before we go to answer those questions, I want you to know that our mission is clearly, maybe not so clearly printed there in the white font of what we do by joining with partners and providing resources to students so they can work on their post-secondary plans, no matter what that may be. Colleges and universities, state colleges, of course, technical schools, military, and exactly right into the workforce as well. So we assist in all of those areas. Next slide, Steve. So the what caused us to start this volunteer organization is I think back to is all the slides that you looked at through this presentation so far, you can see the amount of information and responsibilities that fall on the school staff. And what we heard from counselors, and I heard this both as a high school principal, as a district level administrator, was that the responsibilities have become so grand that it's becoming more difficult for the counselors to serve students in their plans for the post-secondary pathways of learning or post-secondary careers. And it wasn't because it was less, that they had less time, it's just because the amount of work consumed that time. The quote you see there is, essentially what I said as a principal, that, and I'm going to try to adjust this camera here. The quote you see is what I witnessed as a high school principal, and that was that we had so many students that were graduating or not graduating and did not have any plans for what would happen after that point of leaving a high school. So part of that was even more compounded by the fact that we had more students we're discovering that are homeless, that are not supported by a traditional family or even a single parent, that are raised or assigned to someone else. First generation students are students that are undocumented students, and that made it even more challenging. And finally, the whole process of graduating, of applying to a college or university is becoming more complex, along with what you heard from Jasmine, the whole funding. And so it is good to see that other resources are being considered by our state legislators to assist students. Next slide. So what does our team of volunteers do? Essentially what we do is we meet one-on-one with students throughout the whole school year, from August until May, and we meet individually and assist them with all the steps needed to plan, prepare, and move towards their post-secondary learning or their post-secondary career job. When we do this, our volunteers, and again, you see at that note at the bottom there are 3 high schools in Citrus County. About 1,000 to 1,100 students graduate each year. The information The conversations we have, the data we collect, the decisions students make are all recorded. And then at the end of each week, we enter that into an Excel document that is on our Google Share folder so that the counselors and the administrators can see what is happening with their students. And they have data to look at and examine and determine how the systems they have in place support students, again, as they move from high school to post-secondary plans. In the summertime, we provide a 2-day event with our partners at the College of Central Florida, the school district, the local education foundation, and our local YMCA to prepare students for summer. So this is kind of like a pre-planning event for our high school students before we go into the schools to get them ready. And oftentimes we provide scholarships to students who choose to attend or have the arrangements to attend in order to encourage them and provide additional support for getting more students to come to a summer time experience on their own personal time. Ultimately, we also award scholarships to students, and at last year we awarded, as you see there, $68,000 to about 81 students, and that was in the form of a $1,000, $2,000, or $500 scholarship. And you'll see how those scholarship applications, ours from our Citrus County Coalition for College and Careers, the 5 Cs, as well as other agencies, a platform to avail those to students for support for financial aid. And then finally, we assist students with preparation on ACT, SAT, ASVAB, and as well as PERT test. Next slide. So now what? Every year, it seems like there are more statutes, more requirements, more adjusted graduation requirements, test scores that seem to impact the lives of students. Also, the process of accessing the resources to get to college seems to be more challenging, and that's why we exist. We decided to post on our website, to create a website and post it so that parents, students, families, guardians, agencies can see steps it takes. So Steve's going to jump to that. My sidebar here is when we contracted with our nonprofit team with an agency, and by the way, there is no structure or building associated with our organization, and there is no one on a payroll. So all of our funds we receive, we award to students. The contract for this website was out of Kodiak, Alaska, only to discover that this young lady who is the key agent who oversees this was a graduate of the high school in Crystal River, Florida, where I was principal. So the world gets smaller all the time. On this website, the front page just kind of gives an overview of our mission and what we do to help students. But Steve, if you would jump to Steps to College and maybe the student Steps to College students, this, when you scroll down, you will see we offer to students links on each step of this resource. Scroll down a little more. You will see, for example, on exploring universities that we have everything from CAPEX, a tool, a resource, a website that helps students decide what is it I want to do, where do I want to go. We include on here the virtual tours for state colleges, state universities, institutions approved by the Florida Department of Education, and all the career and technical schools in Florida, as well as online learning options for students that are affordable in the state of Florida. Number 2, step 2 there, scroll down. We have information on the FAFSA, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time towards the end of this segment of the presentation to talk about some of the complexities of FAFSA. So we have PowerPoint and other resources for parents and families, and our appreciation to our Florida College Access Network team for helping us find these to avail them to parents, families, students, and schools. The FAFSA, I will tell you, has been pretty challenging, and the challenge has been exacerbated by the Biden-Harris great loan forgiveness that has kind of overtaken the website. And about the last 4 or 5 days, it's been cleared up so that students who are seniors can readily find where they begin to apply for the Pell Grant FAFSA that has been kind of camouflaged. Next there, we provide links and resources for students to begin and apply to various colleges, universities, technical schools in Florida. The fourth step, if we could scroll down, and those are all hyperlinks, by the way. If you could scroll down, Steve. Thank you. We have resources for students to practice ACT, SAT tests and ASVAB. So that's included on our website. And the final segment deals with addressing writing the essay, how to request a letter of recommendation. As simple as that sounds, it's not always simple to students. And then completing a resume. And then finally, it's narrowing down what is the cost of college and what should my choice be. So that is an overview of this segment. And Steve, if we go up, I'm going to point to on the menu, the tabs. So in the pathway planning, if you just tag that for a second there, Steve, you can see we have college planning process, setting up text alerts to get information from various institutions, all of the tools and resources for all of the career technical schools in Florida, the military career planning resources for those who want to go directly into the military or the military prep schools or our academies, and finally career planning. The next tag is our scholarship. On the menu bar there is FAFSA help, which we referenced earlier. And Steve, if you would click local scholarships, one of the challenges we found for the school district of Citrus County was that students would have to be on campus and have to go to the guidance office to get applications for scholarships provided by local civic groups and agencies that are typically awarded in the spring of the year before graduation. What we offered to do was to post these all on our website so that students can click and access the application on their iPad, their phone, their device, and complete it and then submit it if it could be submitted to either the school or the agency, so that it's less cumbersome and more efficient for the student to assist them as they pursue local scholarships. And last year we had about 160 scholarships posted, and out of that awarding $2.6 million to students at each of the 3 high schools in Citrus County. We also link on there our College of Central Florida that has various scholarship opportunities, including their, and again, nothing is there at this time, but in this, at CF, College of Central Florida, they will post their ambassador scholarship, their honors scholarship, and a link to their website where a student would sign in to my CF, my College of Central Florida, and they would see all of the scholarships that the local college has to offer. And scroll up for a second, Steve, to the top bar there. So finally, under scholarships and financial aid, if you would click that on the menu bar, we list all of the links to the state scholarships and Bright Future scholarships, and also tools that navigate to resources to help students in Florida. So let's jump, Steve, then to the next slide. And we welcome you to access this website, although it may not be relevant in terms of scholarship particular information. But right here, Steve, stop for a second. We have discovered this year that we are prioritizing our focus to help foster care students, McKinney-Vento students, first-generation college students, our other at-risk students, including students who are with guardians other than their parents, and undocumented students. I will share with you that in Citrus County, they're at a school district with, again, 1,000 graduating students. We have right now about 22 foster care students in the school district, about 65 McKinney-Vento students, and we don't even have the numbers of first-generation students with guardians other than parents, and our undocumented students are just about a handful in Citrus County. In the next slide. So finally, let's look at FAFSA. And I offer this to you as a resource to print out or share these following plates that show when a student goes onto FAFSA to complete the Pell Grant. At first is kind of overbearing because in order to go onto FAFSA, the student should have a telephone and an email address so that they can get verification and authentication of who they are, because they're entering a federal government website. While it can be done without a phone, it sometimes makes it more complicated. So I say that first to you. And then secondly, I will offer that when helping a student who may be qualifying for independent status, the following pages of the application will automatically identify that student as independent and will not require the student to complete the parent section. First, of course, is when the student clicks foster care, and then are you or have you been part of a foster care program? And there's a subset question there as well. When clicked yes, then the student then immediately is identified as independent. If the student is married or has dependents, children or adults for which they've been assigned responsibility, they too, again, are identified as independent. Next slide. If the student is active duty military or a veteran, if since age 13, both parents deceased, and I will say to you, I've never realized until Steve brought to my attention what he referred to as COVID orphans, the number of students who in the last 2 years do not have parent, one or many who have both parents have deceased as a result of some of the COVID conditions. Student foster care, dependent wards of the state, emancipated students, or someone else who has guardianship of the students as determined by the courts would, when clicked or identified in any of the tabs you see on the screen there, on the online application, that immediately will identify the student as being independent. In the next slide. Most recently, and I believe probably the most confusing waiver with good intent, our legislators moved forward in providing waivers, fee waivers, tuition waivers for students identified as homeless or unaccompanied youth under the title of McKinney-Vento, a federal program. So when the student clicks if they were homeless, and then the following plate would ask, how is that homelessness identified? And for most often in the schools, it is, and I believe every school district now is required to have a district liaison on behalf of those students identified through McKinney-Vento, through homelessness, unaccompanied youth. When that is clicked, the student is again automatically identified as independent. And I point out to you an experience I had yesterday. So again, we are visiting schools every week, 3 times a week. A young person came here from New York, assigned here, and was beginning the process to apply to our state college, Central Florida, and was troubled by the fact that he didn't think he could go because the out-of-state tuition fees would be too difficult, too challenging. And then when we explained to him his classification as McKinney-Vento, what that really means in terms of the 18-year-old would understand, and he clearly understood it and was grateful to know that not only was his tuition and fees waived, that he would not be charged the out-of-state fee. And the other surprises students have, and I think Jasmine and Steve both referred to it in their presentation, when the student completes or qualifies for McKinney-Vento and gets that tuition waiver, and when the student completes and qualifies for the full amount, potentially as an independent student, $6,895 on FAFSA, that money all goes to the account for that student at the college or university. And at times, particularly at the state college, that's more than the student needs. And what most state colleges do at the end of each semester, they send a check to the student that is the balance of that term, money left over that they did not use. And we tell students that that is something that they could use in whatever ways they need in order to ensure that they can continue their learning at that college or university. And next slide, Steve. And finally, I just will say thank you. Thank you, Steve, Jasmine, Ariana. And while we are very busy in serving schools, we often communicate via email or Zoom to other agents who are helping students to help them and share the tools and resources that we're using.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so I wanted to circle back and talk about how you can find out who those liaisons and campus coaches are throughout the state of Florida that can help your students as they navigate and transition to the college environment. So this is our homepage for Positive Pathways. If you go up to the top and click on programs and liaisons, that will give you our full database of information and contact information of who to go to. So looks like Steve is, or Dr. Rios is pulling that up now. Perfect. So here you can see some of our campus-based programs. So these are colleges and universities who have identified one or two professionals that serve as that central point of contact for students from when they are admitted to the university through graduation. And these people can be very, very helpful when helping your students navigate who to go to get the tuition waiver process, if they qualify for any other fee waivers, such as application fees. Sometimes that $200 tuition deposit fee is waived, orientation fees, and things of that nature. So this is where you can get the campus coach information. And then with the state college liaisons, that will pull up who has been identified as a point of contact to help assist you and your students with navigating through that college environment. And they're knowledgeable about who the points of contacts are in the various offices that your students can get connected to. And then Steve, or Dr. Rios, if you can click on regional points of contact.
Jasmine, he may have just had to stop sharing his screen, but if you need to move on, you could do that as well. We have about a few more minutes anyway, if there's anything else you need to add.
Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, the other thing I was going to show, and you'll get this in the slides later, are the regional points of contact. So if for some reason you can't get in contact to the state college or university liaison or campus coaches, you can reach out to the professional that's been identified as a regional point of contact that can help navigate you in the right direction. I serve as a regional point of contact for our central region and for the Southwest region. And my contact information will be shared in here, and you'll get other people's contact information as well. So I believe that was, we were going towards the end of the presentation, and I think that was the last piece that we had to cover. So as Patrick stated earlier, just thank you for having the opportunity to share the knowledge and resources that we have. And please feel free to reach out to each of us. We're here to help you as you help your students transition from the high school environment to post-secondary education. And we appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you guys for presenting and sharing your knowledge. If anybody has any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A. We still have about a few more minutes left. So if you have any questions that haven't been answered yet, feel free to do that. And of course, the slides and the recording will be shared afterwards. There's Steve. Hello.
Hi. So yeah, for some reason, my screen just stopped loading, so I couldn't share anything else. But
No problem.
Jasmine did a great job. I just wanted to let the people know that we have a Florida Reach Positive Pathways Facebook page. So please join us there. And then go to our website that we showed you earlier. And on the top right corner, you can join the network. So join us. And here's our little plug for all the ways you can get in touch with us. Are there questions?
Yeah, so we have a few in the chat right now that I can just pull up right now. So Steve, when you mentioned the birth certificates for students, where can they access that form? And is it only for youth born in Florida?
Probably for youth born in Florida, because it's an agreement that the Florida Department of Health, won't be charging for them. And that form, it's where can it be accessed? I think the McKinney-Vento people, McKinney-Vento contact should have that form.
Okay, Wonderful. So we'll share all those out and people can click the links in your slides and then take them to those websites as well.
Yeah.
We did have another question. What are best practices for supporting foster students socially and emotionally over winter and summer holidays?
Jasmine?
Yeah, so I would say the very first thing, and what I used to do when I was a campus coach at FAU, is that we used to have events closer to the holidays to celebrate within the student organizations that we had developed on campus so that they could be with other people and still feel like they're going through the holidays with the community. Another thing that was really crucial, as you brought up the point of holidays, and oftentimes our students leave and go home, but with the population that we serve, campus is their home. So we worked really hard with our housing office, and this is true across the state, to make sure that our students qualify and apply for break stay housing so they're able to stay on campus during those holidays and receive additional support and just make sure that they have a safe place to stay throughout that time.
Wonderful. Great to hear.
I wanted to add real quick, Adriana, that this is the page where it says State College Liaisons and Coaches. We have this page is also one for the universities where you can get through that same way where I showed you to click. And then once you get here, you can type in the name of the college, the name of the city, in order to, and if you know the name, you can type that person's name to go directly to where, the student might want to go, and then to find out exactly who the foster care liaison is. Even though we have focused and dedicated programs at about 14 colleges and universities, we have a designated person on every campus. And then like Jasmine mentioned, if not, then we do have these regional points of contact, which is also found through that same route on our website, where you can contact these individuals. And you can see Jasmine is there twice for the Southeast region and the Central region.
Awesome. That was going to be my next question too, with how students can find those points of contacts once they do get to take that next step and are in a new setting, a new environment that they may not know all the instructors or who to go to ask those questions. So that's great to hear. I think we have time for one more question. So I think we'll end off on how should counselors, teachers, mentors encourage these students to take the next step to a post-secondary education? What are some words that they may be able to offer them to take that next step?
Let me say one thing and then Jasmine, okay? I would just say that from my point of view, let them know that there are tremendous resources that Florida has really been since 1988, when we were the first state in the country to offer free tuition exemption to foster youth. Consistently, we've been adding and expanding to the point where now 1756 foster kids can get so that they don't have to work. Pell guaranteed, tuition waiver, and plus all the programs that are available on these campuses. I would say that there's open arms waiting for you. Jasmine?
I feel like you covered everything. I mean, that's the important thing, is that in our states, we have a wealth of resources and professionals that are willing to work with our students to make sure that they're keyed into where they need to maximize their opportunities and their time as they pursue their post-secondary education. And
Patrick?
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry. What, Jasmine?
No, that was it. Just that collaboration is key, and we're really lucky to have that collaboration between all of the different parts in our state. Patrick?
In the last minute, I just noticed in the Q&A, the question, Steve, that we have struggled with in the past few months. I'm hoping it's not a problem, but the individual asked that the homeless waiver for tuition and fees only in some institutions was for 1 year and not renewed the next. So if maybe we can clarify that for all to better understand.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And that's also something that very specifically is in the law. And that's why, remember when I said, please click here and you'll find 4 pages of information. Please click there, because you will clearly see that the new law says that once a person gets this homeless exemption, it is anticipated that each subsequent year each subsequent year, they will be eligible for continued support. So please get this PowerPoint and go here where it says click here for an overview, and you can see all the details regarding that question and regarding this this legislation. Thank you for highlighting that, Pat.
Before we close, one more comment. So I know that school districts now are in the process of developing a card to provide to each student at graduation that identifies, and again, I'm not sure what this will look like or how it will be done to be universal throughout our state, but there'll be a card that students will have instead of a letter in the past that will identify their status as McKinney-Vento homeless, unaccompanied youth, that will continue to support them for the next, I believe, it's not just 4 years. I think that law says till age 26.
Right, and look here, you see what I highlighted, requires any student determined to be an unaccompanied homeless child or youth for a tuition and fee exemption for the preceding year to be presumed homeless for subsequent years, unless an institution has conflicting information. That is a game changer. So Patrick, thank you for highlighting that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for all the great information. And again, the slides and the recording will be shared within a week or so on FCAN's website and emailed out to you guys as well. But I want to thank our presenters one last time, and thank you all for attending as well. And I hope you have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you so much. pathways@educatetomorrow.org. Send me your cards, send me your information questions.
Thank you guys.
Thank you, Adriana and FCAN. Thank you, Jasmine and Pat.